Cordia Augusta Foylte Road. Welcome to my story with me, Mary Honan, on Lear Media. And my very special guest today is Devon Harris. And as an original member of the 1988 Jamaican Bobsled team and captain of the 1992 and 1998 teams, three-time Olympian Devon Harris achieved his grand dream. His current dream, of course, is to inspire others to achieve theirs. As an international motivational keynote speaker, Devon is tapping the same energy, determination, and skills that enabled him to bobsled with the best in the world, and is now sparking audiences of all ages to dream big and take their dream to the next level. Born on Christmas Day 1964, Devon Harris was raised in the violent ghetto environment of Olympic Gardens in Kingston, Jamaica. The greatest gift he ever received was the belief that a positive attitude and a new never say die philosophy would carry him farther than a sense of injustice and a heart filled with anger. Devon Harris graduated from the prestigious Royal Military Academy Sandhurst in England and received a Queen's Commission in December 1985 and served in the Officer Corps of the Jamaica Defence Force until December 1982 when he retired as a captain. Hello, Devon.
Mary, I am really well. Thank you for having me. How are you?
I'm very good. You're not in Jamaica now, surely?
No, I hang my hat in New York these days for quite a few decades now.
Devon, isn't it? When I was reading that piece about you, I just found it striking that you were born in Olympic Village and your destiny brought you to the Olympics.
Yes, it's I often joke that I was destined to be an Olympian. I don't know for sure how the area got its name. It seems, I talk about the first time Jamaica competed in the Olympic Games, 1948. That was London too, I think. And we had those four amazing guys. There were 400-meter runners. And so there are streets there, Arthur Wint was one of the guys. So you have Wint Drive, you have Lang Crescent, Roden Crescent, and McKinley Crescent, so maybe it was named after them, but, I ended up living there. And here we are as an Olympian now.
And of course, you are a three times Olympian and twice actually captain of the bobsled team. But I'm just looking at this photograph here of you. It was actually Cool Runnings that brought us, I suppose, those of us who probably wouldn't have been watching always the Olympic Games. And I watched it again last night. It's a really feel-good movie. About your experiences, obviously fictionalized to a large extent. Which character represents you?
I have so many stories about that. I tell people I'm the handsome one, and then they look at me and burst out laughing, and they're like, "There's nothing handsome about you."
Oh Lord, that's so wrong. I personally think you're the Yul Brynner character.
I am. Well, that's the one that I draw closest to, not because he was mean, but he was a dreamer. He's a dude that wanted to. Oh, sorry. He was a bloke. I'm speaking to people in the UK now. He was a bloke that wanted to live in Buckingham Palace. And that's how I see myself as well, as a dreamer.
I thought it was quite sad and touching, really, when he lifted up the photograph of Buckingham Palace and said, "That's where I want to live." And his nemesis, if you like, was the one person that actually had faith in him.
Yeah, that's the thing, though. Sanka in that movie was a dude who crushed his dreams, and that's the thing. We have those people in our lives, and sometimes support comes from the least likely place. In this case, Junior saying, "Hey, man, I've seen this before. My dad has done some stuff, and he has proven that all of us can follow our dreams and reach them."
how important, from a personal perspective, I would be a dreamer, and I've always been a dreamer. I like to think I'm a doer as well, but I just haven't achieved as much as you've achieved in life. How much do you think that dreaming contributes to success as much as actually having money or having this great education? How important do you think dreamers are in society?
I think that without dreamers, we probably still be in the Stone Age, Mary. You know, the dreams are giving you a sense of what is around the corner, what is possible for all of us at different levels, right? And we have our dreams are as varied as we are as individuals. And so, yeah, I think you kind of grow up and you go, if you think about kids and you watch them playing, they all dream. Oh, I want to be Batman. I want to be Superman. I want to be this. They're always thinking of themselves in terms that are greater than what and where they are now.
Yeah,
And it's essentially what dreams are creating a vision is, right? It gives you a sense of what is possible. And you're right. It starts with that image in your mind that, wow, man, maybe I could just do this, but it requires some work. And you know, if you're not dreaming, I think you are. Well, you're really selling yourself short, man.
you're stagnant. You're
Yeah, you're,
stagnant.
you're dying.
I often think that, from the age of 0 to maybe 10, children are constantly dreaming, and that's their most progressive years, where they learn to not just communicate, but they learn to walk and they learn to be part of society. And something happens after that once they start going to school from the age of 4. Everything starts, the dreams start to fade in a sense, and people start to feel that they cannot achieve. They start to become negative in themselves, and the slow the growing or the growth starts to decrease, I think, in people once they start believing that they can't do something. I don't think children have this sense of failure that you have once you start being educated out of your beliefs in yourself.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's education more as it's an expansion of our environment and being exposed to different influences. You're absolutely right. Kids have no sense of failure. If we did, we'll all still be crawling, Mary. I
Yeah,
mean, our first failures is like learning this very basic thing called walking. And if you look on the trepidation on the face of a young child who first learns to stand and then is trying to take that first step, but they don't let the fear of walking stop them. They don't let the failure from falling flat on their bum stops them. They get up and they try again. But you're right. As we get out into the world more and we're exposed to people who failed and allowed that failure experience to set in, some of us, unfortunately, kind of embrace that feeling and that belief.
I'm just looking at a photograph here of you in the bobsled team in the famous scene in Cool Runnings where they're presented with the professional gear, so to speak.
Hmm.
And I was looking at it last night and I was thinking you could have been in the top three had the had it not disintegrated underneath you, the equipment.
The sled. Well, I tell you this, as I said earlier, the movie was fictionalized
Yeah,
in a number of important ways, and the bolt coming loose is one of those. I mean, Disney was very kind in claiming that the bolt, the sled fell apart. We came off the hill with a seventh fastest start time on that run, and we were doing really, really well. I mean, to be honest, though, Mary, I don't know if we would have made the medals. Most people don't recognize this, but that four-man race in the Olympics was the first time ever we were racing the four-man sled. So
yeah,
it was a huge learning curve, and being able to come off the hill with the seventh fastest start time was just monumental.
Because you had gone from 28th, am I correct? Is that much actually right in the movie? You had gone from last to seventh.
That's the I don't it's a really good question. I'm not sure where our start times were in that on the first day, and again that's the movie. What I know is that we that first day we had some issues. We're still learning and still trying to figure out how to get in the sled pushing really fast, and it just came together on that third run, the first run of the second day. Um, but yeah, we know how the story ends. We ended up on our heads.
You ended up in your heads, and yeah, I saw some of the actual footage of you ending up on your heads. How you didn't break your necks is quite extraordinary. It's
It is a
it's just
spectacular
a
crash.
horrific. It's just a horrific sport.
It is a challenging sport. It is rough. I often say, no disrespect to the golfers out there. I often say it's not golf.
I know my cousin's a
Um,
professional golfer, and he has it so easy.
yeah,
It's a. There's a famous writer here in Ireland who said golf is a very bad walk. Is a walk gone very bad. A good
right.
walk gone very bad.
Hmm. Yeah, but I tell you this that I was part of that crash. I was right in the center of it. It looked way worse on TV than it felt.
Your
Uh,
neck was twisted.
well, fortunately for me, that wasn't my neck. That was Dudley Stokes's neck. Dudley was the driver, and his neck was up. But I tell you this, he walked away. He was injured, but not from that crash. Dudley got injured earlier that morning walking on the track. He slipped and fell on the ice and dislocated his collarbone. Um,
Wow.
yeah, but walked away unscathed, except for our egos were bruised severely, as you can imagine. But
What was it
physically, we walked
like,
away.
Devon? What was it like, seriously, for four young men from Jamaica, from one of the hottest countries in the world, to face out into? I mean, Ireland isn't the warmest country. We're one of the wettest. But even in the movie now, and I know it was taking license, but even in the movie to see the four characters trying to walking out into the snow, and I could just imagine what it must have been like for four Jamaicans landing in Canada in the height of winter and blizzards. You
Yeah.
must have thought we're insane.
Well, I tell you this. I mean, we started training in October of 1987, so we're exposed to the elements, for many weeks, a couple of months before the Olympic Games. One of the things, believe it or not, that certainly helped me to acclimatize to bobsledding was being in England. As I mentioned, I graduated from Sandhurst, and England is cold and wet and miserable.
It's not as bad as here in Ireland. No, it's not as bad. I was born
Yeah,
in England, and the weather is more protected. We're out in the Atlantic Ocean, so
yeah.
we get the rain and the cold that England doesn't get.
Hmm.
We're
Well, coming from Jamaica, man, yeah, it took some getting used to.
used to
But
it.
but here's the interesting thing. By the time I got to Calgary, we're kind of seasoned winter guys. Um, Interestingly enough, when we got to Calgary, it was minus 25 degrees during the Olympics, as they showed in the movie. But then in Calgary, they have a warm wind called a Chinook, and it rolled in, and Mary, it warmed up everything. I remember that second week of the Olympics, we were going to go pick up a four-man bobsled because we didn't have one. And I remember being in the back of a pickup in sunglasses and t-shirt at the Winter Olympics. That's how crazy it got.
Wow. I mean, this it must have been the most extraordinary experience to be. I know you say there was a Jamaican team in the 70s, but really, I mean, our understanding of the Jamaican bobsled team was you four, and that has become immortalized. You've become immortalized. I'll take you back to the very beginning. tell me a little bit about your childhood, Devon, and what it was that made you so determined, almost, I suppose, in the same vein as Yul Brynner in the movie, to
Yeah.
to to, to achieve something, and then you're now at the stage where you're trying to help others to achieve what their goals. What was it? What was it that drove you?
Yeah, I often blame my grandmother for that. I spent my early years from, I think, 7 months to about 5 years old living with her, my father's mother, in rural Jamaica, a small rural district called Horton in St. Elizabeth. And the thing about my grandmother was that she was this amazing storyteller. She told me these stories. The ones that impacted me the most clearly were the ones she told me about soldiers and the amazing feat they could perform. They could jump in these deep gullies and not break their legs. And it just lit up my little 5-year-old imagination and inspired me to want to join the army from that young age. But more importantly, I think, Mary, it inspired me to want to go pursue things that other people thought were difficult or impossible. And that obviously are clearly connected with whatever else that was inside of me that made me want to go put myself in places where, certainly according to circumstances or society, I have no business being. And so that just kind of drove me. And growing up eventually moved back to Kingston, and it's poor and it's violent. And, where I lived, in the midst of all of this poverty, you could see, I speak about this all the time when I give speeches, forest hills lined with big, beautiful mansions. And it was just so clear that there were people there who dreamt and who achieved and were living better than I was living, than the people my family and the people in my neighborhood were living. And I aspired to do and be like that. And for me, the quickest way out was the army. It just worked out perfectly because I wanted to be in the army anyway. And then as I pursued that, discovered that you could actually enlist as an officer, not necessarily as a private. And I didn't know if I could do that. And there was always a stigma that if you're from a neighborhood like mine, if you're from the hood, you can't be an army officer. And I'm like, well, that's what I want to be. And well, what do you know?
Yeah, I think I'm a bit like that. If somebody tells me I can't do something, that drives me on to prove that yes, I can.
Mm-hmm.
I have that kind of a mentality. I like almost people telling me I can't do something because it just
Exactly.
that's the impetus I need to
Mm-hmm.
actually do it. I probably wouldn't do it if they didn't tell me I couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
But it was your commanding officer who actually encouraged you to try out for the bobsled team. Am I right?
Yes, I was a young lieutenant, second lieutenant, trying to figure my army career out. And I wasn't a picture of an athlete. I'd come back from Sandhurst with a broken ankle. I went down to Netherhaven and jumped from a plane. Nothing was wrong with the plane.
Just you.
And I broke my ankle. Okay, I used to be young and foolish. Please don't judge me, right?
We've all done it. I think I've broken nearly every bone in my body at some stage.
Yeah, so I was limping around barracks, but run about the same time, this was now 1987, and the Olympics were coming up in LA, 1988, no, sorry, Seoul, Korea in
So
88. And I aspired to compete in those Olympics. My hero at the time was Lord Sebastian Coe, 800,
yeah,
1500
yeah, yeah,
meter.
yeah. Said Cole.
And then I ended up running a cross country race, and they're like, "Oh my God, he's fit!" They couldn't believe it, right? This dude who was limping around, and so the colonel thought he'd send his young fit officer to the team trials, only because of a philosophy in the army that says officers must always participate, and he had a bunch of enlisted men going, so he sent his young fit officer, not really expecting me to make the team, but the way I'm wired. If I'm going to go do this, then I'm going to go do it. I'm not just,
110%. 100% all
Yeah,
in.
my intention wasn't going to show up and make up numbers. It was like, oh my
Yeah,
God, how do I make this team? How do I make this team? And so
yeah.
I just tried my darnest.
Yeah, but do you think that's something that's innate in you? I mean, you've had that determination to, you know, to not just be a success from childhood. That carried into your athletics as well, and now it's carrying into the work you do. You carried into the army. Do you think
Hmm.
being a competitive person it helped you when you were in the army? If you weren't as competitive as you were, you mightn't have moved up the ranks. You mightn't have even joined the army because you might have felt, oh, who am I? I'm here. I'm from the slums of Jamaica. Who's going and sit back on that rather than push yourself forward?
No, I agree with you. There's this competitive nature. There's this desire to just be better, be the best I can be. And which is why I said, that innate thing about me causes me to put myself in places where circumstances or society would say I have no business being, right? But each time I do that, I get to kind of stretch my boundaries a little bit. I get to grow some more and I go, oh, wow, so I achieved this. Oh, there's something else around the corner I could possibly go achieve. So I go after that as well.
That's an amazing photograph of the four of you.
Mhm. Yes, this is on the beach in just outside Kingston, Hellshire.
That's
Um,
not that's not England.
no, it's not. Do you have beaches in England? I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I know. But
But
many
the thing
things
is
in
that
England.
we're a bobsled team from Jamaica, and everybody has this idea that we are always on the beach training, which obviously doesn't make sense. But this was a picture taken in 1987 for People's Magazine, and the sled was a makeshift sled that we used on the army base to practice our starts, and we lugged it out onto the beach. You obviously can't push it on the sand, but we posed on it for photographs.
Amazing. It's a stereotypical butch photograph of four men that you feel instinctively are going to compete in the Olympics and be the best they can.
Yeah.
Isn't that really what the motto of any competition should be, to be the best you can?
Yeah.
I think it's far more important and far more difficult to compete against yourself than it is to compete against somebody else, because you always have much more. As a competitive dancer myself all my life, I think it's harder once you have that competitive edge in you, it carries into everything you do in life, and you're always competing against yourself because you're the hardest on yourself than anyone would be.
I completely agree, and it's really the ethos of the Olympic movement as well. If you think about it, swifter, higher, stronger is a motto. And lately they added commute together. Um, so when we think of the Olympics, we think of winning medals and breaking records and all that stuff, and that is certainly part and parcel of the Olympics. But more importantly, it really is about you becoming better than who you were yesterday or the week before, the year.
That's
And
exactly it.
yeah, and eventually, some of us we get so much better as an athlete in this case, but also as persons that you end up winning medals.
Yeah.
But yeah, that drive, that competitiveness to become better, to become the best you can be, it's key.
But as well as that, uh, you're a very team orientated person. I mean, I'm looking at the fact that you chose the bobsled, or it chose you, and that's a very much a team event. And but you were also in the army, which very much, I suppose, was like another team. You're not an individual in the army.
Hmm.
You're part of a team, but you're also part of a family. And I don't think probably you'll ever have a family that's probably ever more intense than being a family of soldiers, because you're putting your life in the other person's hands.
Hmm. That's very
You
true.
know,
I,
And how important do you think it is to be a team player?
So here's a paradox, because certainly in the beginning, I'm a little bit of was a little bit of a loner. I started, my first love in sport was football, and I hated losing. I hated the idea of playing really, really hard, and some other guy didn't play hard, and we lost primarily because of that.
Yeah,
I ran
yeah,
track. I did athletics, and I'm not losing. And if I lose, it's my fault. But I've come to appreciate and understand. And so while I'm like that, I understand what it is to be part of a team, and the importance that and the fact is nobody succeeds by themselves. And so yes, as a certainly as a soldier, you recognize this is serious stuff, man. Your life is literally in the hand of the guy to your left and your right.
yeah.
And you have to live up to that responsibility as well, because they are also relying on you.
I
And
mean, even when it comes to your own family, your own blood relatives, you
mhm,
don't have that same dependence for life on them as the family, the military family you've chosen.
I
You
I
know,
agree.
you depend every second of the day on the person who's beside you, whether you like them or not. They might be the one person that stands in the way of life and death for you.
And so oftentimes when unfortunately we have these experiences where we do lose a soldier, I have a theory anyway that his fellow soldiers hurt even more than his blood
Yeah,
family,
yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
there's that, because of that connection where that in the heat of battle, your life is literally um, in the guy's hands. So um, there's that level of connection that you could never get anywhere else.
So, Devon, after you've been in several, since you've captained two of the Jamaican bobsled teams, 4 years later and 4 years after that. So it's safe to say it wasn't your first rodeo, or it wasn't your last rodeo, so to speak. But I was looking there recently. The Jamaican rugby team has almost followed in your footsteps, because there's now a Jamaican rugby team, which there wasn't. And I
Yeah.
heard one of them being interviewed on GB News, not the team, but a Jamaican guest. And he was talking about the pride that they have in Jamaica for this Jamaican rugby team. And it's the same pride that they had for the Jamaican bobsled team and for Usain Bolt and people like that. It's such a small little country. We're a tiny country here in Ireland. We're tiny. But Jamaica's even smaller. And it has produced this wealth of talent when it comes to sport and music, with Bob Marley, one of my favorite musicians.
Hmm.
But it's it has punched way above its size when it comes to sport and music. Are you proud? You must be incredibly proud to be one of the few, if you like, really prestigious athletes from Jamaica to have made it big in the world of sport.
Yeah, absolutely. Full with pride. What I know, and this is true generally. People tend to rise up to the level of expectations that's placed on them, whether by themselves or others around them. And I think when you make a Jamaican sports team, you just expected to do well. It's like you're expected to do well, and so people will work hard, they'll train hard, they'll compete hard to raise up to reach that level of expectation, and it feeds on itself. So I talk about 1948, and this is only my theory of these guys who went there and performed so incredibly well, and
Yeah.
it kept building on itself, and now it's on a with the exploits of Usain Bolt. Our team inspired others. It's on a completely different level now.
And now you have the rugby team who's going to inspire another generation of rugby players.
Yeah, yeah,
One would
exactly.
imagine, I can't understand why it's taken so long, really, because um, you're such an athletic nation that I suppose, I mean, it's like here in Ireland, we stereotype the Irish as being into the crack and having great fun and playing music. We're not all musicians in this country. I suppose Jamaica isn't full of athletes either, but the ones that we have seen are pretty spectacular. I mean, I don't think there'll be anybody like Usain Bolt
It's going to be a
in
while.
the Olympics.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's going to be. I'm just glad that he's on my team. That's all.
isn't it? Yes, yes, yes. I just kind of feel sorry for anyone who has to actually line out against him,
Uh,
especially the race. I can't remember what it was, and he looked to his right and smiled at the guy that was running beside him as if to say, "I'm passing you out."
yeah, yeah. I know. It had to be when he was competing, and I know athletes are competitive, but it had to be disheartening.
Oh, it must have been just crushing when he was giving it everything, and Bolt just smiled and said, "Look, I'm sick of this," and just went off. It was just
Yeah.
fantastic to watch it. But tell me about after your career had your army career you finished, and your sporting career finished, and then you decided to go down the route of motivational speaking. What was that a natural progression for you?
Was it yeah, that's a good question.
Somebody
I've
was an
never been asked that
introvert.
before. I guess I'm a chatterbox, so that helps. No, I tell you this. I was working to compete in my third Olympics. I was now out of the army. I lived in New York, and I met a guy who was an agent for some reggae artist, and he wanted to be my agent. And I never had an agent before, and it sounded really cool. I'm like, yeah, sure. And then he told me about this thing called motivational speaking. And I said, wow, that sounds good. I will do it, but after the Olympics. It turned out that his only role in my life was to tell me about motivational speaking because he did absolutely nothing to help me to get to the Olympics. But he had planted the seed. And so now I'm working with some other guys. I'm like, hey, after the Olympics, I'm going to be a motivational speaker. So the idea of becoming a motivational speaker kind of gave me some focus, something that I could reach to after my next last Olympic Games. And so after the Olympics, I started speaking. I just started sharing my story, and nobody booed, and I'm like, oh, people see, and people were inspired actually to speak seriously, and it just kind of grew. You start to learn the craft and um, develop your speaking abilities. I started to do that, and um, really learn how to craft my speeches and tell a story and connect it to the audience, which is one of the things I'm
It's
very, very.
not easy. It's not
No,
easy.
it's work. I mean, people think you just get up and you speak, and maybe there are some people who do that, but I spend a lot of time trying to understand the audience, what their challenges are, what their fears are, and then finding that story, that those analogies in my personal story to connect to them, so that I can truly inspire them.
Yeah, that's a photograph of you actually speaking.
Hmm.
You're out of the lycra there and into the suits.
Indeed, indeed. I started when I just started. People would ask for me to speak in my racing uniform, and initially I thought it was corny, but I did it. And then eventually, I mean, you change perception. You go, well, one, I don't fit in that suit anymore. um, but more importantly, it was also I get it that people think Jamaica bobsled is cool and it's funny. It's a funny story, and of course, Cool Runnings added to that comedic side of it. But I think a lot of people, what get lost on a lot of people is a serious, committed,
Yes, yes, yes,
hard work
people.
side of it. And I really, we've always struggled to bring that point across. So eventually I said, hey, no more racing uniform. I'm speaking in a business suit because I'm actually a serious speaker.
Yeah, I mean, people think they look at they could be mistaken for thinking when you watch Cool Runnings that it was all um, happy-go-lucky um, and that it was almost that you haphazardly went into it and in a non-professional, if you like, in a non cared for way. But you obviously went into it with the intentions of being the best at that you could possibly be, given it was your first time doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And that, takes a lot of commitment, especially to be the first at anything.
The thing that most, I think, get lost on most people, if you think about this, you think about our story and the fact that we started not knowing the sport and had such a short time to get ready, but yet performed so admirably, if I may say so myself. That couldn't just be because we're happy-go-lucky, fun-loving. Are we fun-loving and easygoing? Absolutely. But to achieve at such a high level in such a short period of time also speaks to the dedication, the determination, the discipline, the drive, the hard work. Um, and so people cause our laid back, easygoing Jamaican style to overshadow the real work behind the scenes.
Devon, I don't see a whole lot of a difference generally between the Jamaican people and the Irish people. We have that same sense of um, laid back kind of a sense. We're not as laid back as we used to be when I was a child. I mean, it was so laid back, it was horizontal in this country. I mean, my dad, when he came from England, he used to walk out. When he went back to England on holidays, he used to walk on the streets, and my uncle used to say to him, "Get off the road, Cyril. It's not Ireland, because cars automatically will stop here." And
Right.
people have this laid back. And when I look at the Jamaican people, I think there's a correlation between the way of living and that easy-going, welcoming attitude or impression we have of Jamaican people as being welcoming, in the same way as we have with the Irish. We're renowned for being welcoming.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe it's the Irish influence on Jamaica because
Yeah.
way back there was there were lots of Irish men and women who went to Jamaica. So who
Your own name is Harris. It's not. It's There's lots of Harrises in this country.
yeah, exactly. So there's actually a historical connection as well between Jamaica and Ireland.
That's right. Yeah, that's
Hmm.
right. But Devon, how much of being an ex-serviceman, I suppose, prepares you for the commitment and the drive and the sacrifices that you need for everything that you do in your life? I mean,
Hmm.
obviously, you started off with the stream of being an athlete. Then you went into the army, and that was a side by side dream that you had of going into the military. It's a very competitive business being in the army. I mean,
Hmm.
you don't want to stay a private all your life. If you're ambitious, you want to move up the ranks. How much of can you attribute, I suppose, this commitment and sense of duty, and that you carry into everything in your life?
It's one of those things that's drilled in you. Clearly, if you join the army, you're right. You're ambitious, but you have a sense of discipline and a sense of duty and commitment to that duty. But when you get in, that is taken to a completely new level, right? The things that you would have settled for and not done, thought it was okay to do it, half-hearted, is not tolerated in the army, right? So you learn from very earlier on that there's very high standards, and if you want to succeed and grow and get promoted, yeah, you have to be committed. And but then it's also beyond. It's an environment that trains you, rears you, condition you to think way beyond yourself as well. It's not just about you. We spoke about the importance of teamwork. So it's the soldier to your left and your right, but it's also the country that you're serving. Um, that is the essence. That's the whole reason for being in the military, because you're there to serve. Our the motto at Sandhurst, and sometimes I say it might sound corny, but I so embrace that. Serve to lead is a motto at Sandhurst, and it
But
has been.
you must have shown pretty much an extraordinary element of determination and the will to succeed when you were accepted into Sandhurst. It's no mean achievement to get into Sandhurst.
Yes, yes. Yeah, I mean, just
You
to.
didn't just start at the bottom, you went for the top, Devon.
Hey, listen, Mary, just to get through the selection process in Jamaica. Oh my God, yes. I started learning very early, even before I got in, how important it was to be determined. And I think that's one of the things. It's really my calling card, my persistence, and that's when it helped me get through uh, those initial selection process. And then yeah, get into Sandhurst and having to deal with just like almost immediate change, going from the middle of the hood to the most prestigious military training school in the world, going from tropical Jamaica to
To
wet,
really,
rainy
yes.
England. Uh, going from an environment where we're 98% black to being one of only three black guys in my platoon. There was a lot to take in for sure, and then of course the physical and the mental training and stress that you experience there. Yeah.
And going from one family to another family,
Hmm.
and the family you have no choice in having. I mean, you're born into that family, as opposed to the family you almost choose to be.
Choosing, yes.
You choose, and that you will fight to the death for. You
Indeed,
know,
indeed. And so again, it goes back to that whole thing of committing to something that is outside of yourself and bigger than yourself, that sense of duty.
Devon, my dad was in the Royal Army Medical Corps. In he did his national service when he was. My dad was from London, and my uncles, they all served in the Royal Army, in different areas of the British Army as for the national service. How important, or do you think it's important, that every 17, 18-year-old do national service? How much does it help a person, a man, a boy or a girl going into the military to actually uh, grow as human beings, not just as men and women, but as human beings, and develop a sense of respect for themselves and a sense of pride in what they do, and pride in their country, if you like, or pride in their people, or pride in
Mhm.
how much do you think it's important that youngsters aren't hanging around the streets, aren't getting the potential of being in danger, but go into the army and learn to get up early every morning to be responsible for their own personal hygiene, getting out and having a focus.
Yeah, I happen to think that we all have our own path, and if you are a young person who um, is heading off to trade school or university, and you're being responsible and growing in that sense, well, kudos for you. And for those who are still a little bit aimless at that age, being in the army would do them wonders. There's absolutely no doubt about it. For all the reasons we spoke about earlier, the sense of discipline and commitment, and being responsible for yourself and for others. Um, you have no choice but to grow personally in an environment like that. And that would definitely help, many of those young people who are kind of hanging out on the side of the streets.
What was it like the first day you walked into Sandhurst?
Oh my God, so many different emotions. One is, oh, I'm finally here. I can't believe it. It was my first time out of Jamaica. So I'm finally in a
Oh,
different country, and understanding the immense task that was ahead of me. And then I've never been in a place that was so grand. And I kind of remember walking around the academy. It was May of 85. And the course, I was a couple of days before the course. And I remember walking around, and there was a car driving by me, and there was a dog in the car sticking his head out. And my mouth just dropped wide. I've never seen a dog in a car. I'm like, what the world? What is that? But
yeah, but in Cool Runnings, the dog was on the car.
exactly.
That's
But
adorable.
it was just grand. So I was taking in the space, the physical space, but just also understanding the enormity of the task that was ahead of me, although you could see the dream beginning to take shape.
And once you put the uniform on,
Yes, it was like, oh, well, I mean, it's just a next step, man. It was just the first few days were miserable. We were marching around in our suits, shirt and tie, everywhere we went. And then, yeah, the uniform on, and it was game on.
you received the Queen's Commission in 1985.
Hmm.
That must have been fantastic.
Yes, and that's, I talk about the serve to lead, and I remember as we were graduating, marching up the grand entrance of Old College, and like in that moment, I realized that from this moment on, nothing I did was really training anymore. It was real. I was going to be leading soldiers for real. There won't be an instructor behind me to correct me. And so yes, that serve to lead motto just like fell on me like a ton. I just like embraced it, and yeah, my life changed for sure in that moment.
Well, if you don't mind, tell me a little about your foundation, Keep On Pushing.
Indeed, the Keep On Pushing Foundation was started back in 2006. I'd gone back to the old neighborhood, to my old primary school, speaking to the principal, and a lot of the kids were coming to school hungry.
Isn't
Um,
that awful? Isn't that absolutely awful?
exactly, and if you're hungry, you can't learn. You can't learn. You don't get educated, and you can't become a contributing person to society. So we started that foundation with a breakfast program. We have done a school supplies program. We just built a sick bay at the school, actually last in 2020, which came in really handy because of COVID. And we're now in the process of setting up a computer lab at the school that will be used by the students, but also the young people in the communities, those who didn't go off to join the army, give them something. It's about creating hope, giving hope, and creating opportunities.
You know,
We also believe that they have the potential to be successful as well. And sometimes we all need a hand up.
it's a hand up, or, I've interviewed many survivors of genocide, world genocides, and most of them, in fact, all of them have said that the one thing that kept them going throughout, whether it's the Holocaust or the death penalty in Sudan or South African apartheid, the one thing that kept them going was hope.
Hmm.
Those that died were the ones that lost all sense of hope. The minute hope was gone, that was it. And hope is probably the most important thing that a person has. And once that's gone, that's it. And what you're giving these people more than food is you're giving them hope.
Indeed. I speak a lot about authenticity as well, Mary, and, being able to go to that school and say to the kids, okay, so I've done these things, gone to Sandhurst, the Olympics, blah, blah, blah. But you know what? I used to be in these very classrooms, running around this very schoolyard. And if I can do it, I'm back here to tell you you can do it as well. So just standing up, turning up, being authentic, and providing that hope, that glimmer of hope for them as well.
Yeah, I think it's important that they have role models, people that just hasn't turned up and become an Olympic athlete or an officer in Sandhurst, but somebody that has actually lived their lives, become something out of adversity. Because many children can see athletes and think, I'm never going to be an athlete. I'm never going to get off this island of Jamaica, even though it sounds idyllic.
Mm-hmm.
But when you think of Yul Brynner in the movie, that's all he wanted, was to get off the island and to have his mansion. And the mansion was just a metaphor for success. And if as I saw, you were the character, he was the representation of you. You made that success from nothing, if you like, and you're somebody who's ideally positioned to be able to show some child in the same position as you. Well, you don't always have to be. This doesn't have to define you. This can actually be the impetus that pushes you
Yes,
to go forward.
completely. And, being able to just, as you say, have a role model, just have somebody who has traveled a similar path, a similar journey to you, and have come out on the other end. That's what I hope more than anything else in serving these kids at my primary school, that they will go, well, you know what, he did it. There's hope for me. I can do it as well.
You set this up in 2006, didn't you?
Yes, I did. Yeah, yeah. And
And it's
we're still going, and still have a lot of room for growth.
yeah, and what do you hope to achieve from it going forward?
I mean,
Do
my
you
goal
hope
is
to
our stated goal is to provide practical solutions to some of the issues that are preventing these kids from learning. And in providing that opportunity for them to learn, my hope is that they will go on to make a success of their lives, and then come back and reach down and help somebody else to do the same.
and you're also a children's book author. You wrote Yes, I Can, and
Yes,
a semi-autobiographical motivational book, Keep on Pushing, Hot Lessons from Cool Runnings.
indeed, indeed. And I heard you say, yes, I can earlier. I'm like, yeah, that will be my book. And the book, that children's book, was
Yes,
written obviously to encourage children to dream and believe big and not to give up. And the semi-autobiographical book is, just taking the lessons from the bobsled experience, but my life in general, and hoping to share some life lessons with folks.
if you had your life back again, would you do exactly everything that you've done, or would you do it differently?
For the most part, I would say, I often say that, if I could change anything, it would be to kind of stop and smell the roses. I realize I didn't do a lot of that, but maybe that would have distracted from the journey. But
I,
the rough parts made me stronger. They weren't fun when I was experiencing them, but they made me stronger, and it's part and parcel of that journey for
but
sure.
I don't think that I know you're a microcosm of a lot of different personalities. You say you're an introvert, but you're
Hmm.
an introvert who likes speaking with people. You're a loner who likes to be part of a group, and to be part of a fraternity, if you
Yes.
like, or who feels comfortable in a fraternity of band of brothers, if you like. But at the same time, I can't imagine sitting here talking to you that you could be the type of person to sit back and smell the roses.
No, it's not, actually not sit back, but so the analogy I draw is
Yes,
I'm on one end of a rose garden, and I'm trying to get to the other end. and all I'm interested in is getting to the
Get
other
to the
end,
other end.
as opposed to take pause to kind of smell the roses and enjoy the journey a little bit more. Is kind of what I'm saying. I was just too. Um,
I think I'm like that though, Devon. I think competitive people are like that. They don't see the journey. They just see the end
Yeah,
goal.
yeah, yeah. And
And
in looking back, I'm like, wow, that might have been missing. But I also recognize that had I stopped, maybe it would have disrupted my journey. So I'd rather get to the end rather than pause to
I think
smell.
sometimes I think sometimes when I put my philosophical hat on, I think sometimes the journey is even greater than the actual outcome, even if the outcome is supremely successful.
Yeah.
I think, that, I mean, for the likes of you or Usain Bolt, you see all these achievements, and you see with Usain Bolt all the records being broken, and you um, and all that. But it's the actual journey from stepping into that bobsled from the first time, the nervousness, the
Mhm.
anxiousness, the worries about failure. What if I don't succeed? What if, and you hear people say, but what if I fail? But what if I fly? We tend to sit back and always think, what if I fail? I'm letting down A, B, C, D, and E. But starting the journey is the main thing, and it's the
Mhm.
little incremental steps you take along the way that that when you look back on your time, they're as important as actually reaching the Olympics for
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
I'm sure.
No, yeah, and you're right. You can't. People don't start because they're afraid to fail. But as you say, what if you fly? You definitely fail if you don't try. And if you try and you fall short of the mark, it's a lesson, it's a learning moment, it's a teachable moment that you can use to then propel yourself forward. And so, yeah, getting. I remember my first bobsled run, scared to death, as you would, and
Was it
full of
terrifying?
anxiety. But I did it, and here I am, a three-time Olympian. So I didn't fail. I flew.
It's like jumping out of the plane for the first time.
Oh yeah, even the second time too is horrible. But I've learned my lesson. I'm not jumping out of a plane again, but I will
Do you
go
know,
bobsled again.
it's something that I've always wanted to do.
Yeah,
Now, whether I would actually do it, it's the only daredevil thing that I would like or see myself wanting to do is to jump out of a plane. I'm not a very adventurous. Being a dancer, I've always gravitated away from anything that could break your leg,
right, right.
and I still managed to do it. But if you're looking back now on your career, on your life, and on your career, um, have you any regrets?
No, no, no regrets. I mean, yeah, we're talking philosophically about stopping to smell, pausing to smell the roses, but no,
Yeah.
it's been an amazing ride.
And what was the most important, if you were to actually pick one thing that you've achieved in life, which would it be, or would it be a culmination of them all?
It's something that we haven't even mentioned, and it's being a father. Of all the things that I'm called, the thing I love being called the most is
Is
daddy.
Dad?
Yeah,
How many have you?
5.
Oh my goodness!
We're trying to get a bobsled team here.
You have a bobsled team now, plus one,
Two boys and 3 girls.
two. Oh yeah, so you have another few to get for the boys bobsled
We're gonna
team.
have to do the mixed
Boys,
thing.
three more boys, two more boys now, and you have a male bobsled team, and
Yeah,
what, two or what? Yeah, and one girl, and
yeah.
you have a
Or
female.
4 person. Yeah, completely.
Good Lord. Well, Devon, it was just an absolute joy talking to you today. It was so much easier than I thought it was going to be difficult talking to an Olympian.
No, not at all. We're very average and ordinary people. We just happen to have competed in the Olympics. That's all.
Thank you, Devon. What part of the States are you in, actually?
I'm sorry?
What part of the States are you in?
Oh, I'm in New York.
Oh,
Just
I've
north of the city. Yeah.
been there many times judging
Mhm.
Irish dancing.
Ah,
But yeah, so it's a fabulous city.
indeed, indeed.
Very different from, I'd say, Kingston, Jamaica.
A little bit, a little bit. But I've acclimatized. I've gotten used to being here.
Thank you very much, Devon.
Thank you so much, Mary. I appreciate you having me on.
Indeed. Well, Shindera Leshan Clora, that's the end of the show for today. Until the same time or until the next time, Lacuna of Day. But Wallam Tukulerchi, Kona Sonis August Grow, I wish you peace, happiness, and love, August Gabation Sloan. Sloan, Devon, bye.
So long, Mary. Take care. Thank you.